If you watched the last video, link in the description if you didn't, then you know that I thought Legend of Korra Book 2 was pretty crappy. Normally when a franchise releases something with so many glaring issues, Star Wars The Last Jedi being a prime example of this, they like to pretend it never happened, like they did in The Rise of Skywalker. But The Legend of Korra doesn't do this, and I really appreciate their desire to maintain the narrative cohesion of the series. Book 3 picks up 2 weeks after Korra's showdown with Unalaq. The world is still struggling to get used to the presence of spirits everywhere, and Mako is struggling to overcome the social awkwardness created by his breakup with Korra, and Asami too apparently. The people's opinion of Korra isn't all that great, and after Book 2, none that was mine at this point, especially after seeing spirit vines growing all over Republic City. Mako and Bolin can't even go into their own home, a circumstance I'm sure is the case for countless others as well. But some good does come out of Korra's decision to leave the spirit portals open. Somehow, during the harmonic convergence, many people across the world inexplicably gained the ability to airbend. Pretty great, right? So when the president bans Korra from Republic City, she and Team Avatar go with Tenzin to scour the world in search of these new airbenders. The second episode of the season, titled Rebirth, is my favorite episode of the series thus far. It is absolutely hilarious. The gang just set off on this grand adventure, hoping to recruit all the new airbenders, then take them to the Northern Air Temple to be trained. But it never occurred to them that people would rather not drop everything to do so. They never thought that this guy wouldn't want to leave his family and become a nomad, or that someone wouldn't want to shave their head, or wear drab clothing, or have a sky bison as their best friend. Wait, why wouldn't someone want that? But watching Tenzin, a man overjoyed by this newfound hope for the survival of his people, try so hard to recruit the new airbenders only to fail at every turn was honestly really funny. And when Korra decides to give recruitment a shot, well, she meets her greatest opponent yet. Napoleon Dynamite.
I didn't ask to become an airbender, you know?
Well, you're about to carry, you little slacker, because you're coming with me!
No! Let me go!
But anyways, they opt to do a public performance in the hopes of inspiring airbenders to sign up. But even after all this effort, they only managed to recruit a kid named Kai, who only signed up in the hopes of robbing them blind. But hey, it's a start. Then they go to Ba Sing Se hoping to find more, but the queen is a jerk and refuses to tell them about any new airbender cases. Turns out she has actually been kidnapping them and conscripting them into her military. Like, sure, she technically has the right to do that, but that's kind of a jerk move when there's no war going on. So Korra and friends help them escape the queen, not before Kai and Jinora get this really cute moment together. The season is full of these actually. It's really nice to see an innocent little romance in the show that isn't tainted by countless moments of cringe. Afterwards, Tenzin gives them a speech, offering them the choice to either go to a new home away from the queen or learn to master their new abilities. Watching the tears swell in Tenzin's eyes when they all agreed to go to the Air Temple was a really beautiful moment, and his struggle to teach them in an effective manner was fun to watch too. It's in these fun, humorous, and cute moments that Book 3 is at its strongest. It's in its more serious episodes, though, that it has a tendency to create inconsistencies in the story, as well as create pointless filler. The villain Zahir and his team of elite benders want to kidnap Korra, something they once tried to do alongside Unalaq when Korra was just a little kid. Thankfully, their plans were thwarted, of course. But this is where the first inconsistency arises. Back in Book 2, Korra was upset that they kept her in the Southern Tribe training compound for her entire childhood. Why didn't they justify this by mentioning this attempted kidnapping by an elite bending squad? It seems like something that would have come up. But anyways, the harmonic convergence happens, giving the leader of the group, Zahir, the ability to airbend. If Zahir was nearly capable of kidnapping Korra without being able to bend, just imagine what harm he could cause in a few years once he hones these new powers. Or actually, in a few days. He's already an exceptional bender, despite receiving hardly any training whatsoever. To such an extent, he's even able to give Tenzin a run for his money. He's also spiritually gifted, apparently even more so than the girl who did this. Allow me to explain. When searching for the airbenders in Ba Sing Se, Jinora explained that she could spiritually transport herself underground to see if they were in the catacombs, sewers, and whatnot. But she was only able to do so if her body was nearby. Yet Zahir is able to pinpoint Korra's exact location from across the entire globe. Also, near the end of the season, Zahir somehow figures out how to fly, something that not even Aang was capable of doing.
They fly now? They fly now!
Clearly, this season has some inconsistencies, and like I said, it has a fair amount of filler too. The show spends a lot of time fleshing out Beifong's broken relationship with her sister Sue after Sue disgraced their mother's career, eventually leading to Toph's resignation as the police chief of Republic City. The episodes dealing with this weren't particularly bad, but they definitely threw a wedge into the season's pacing. I mean, just think about it. Zahir and his team are hunting down Korra, yet they continue to remain in one spot. They are supposed to be finding more airbenders, yet they spend so much time working on recruiting just one. And speaking of things that don't really serve the main plot, Zuko is in this season. And quite frankly, I don't understand why. Don't get me wrong, it was great to see him, and when he first showed up, I was like this.
Oh my gosh, it's Lord Zuko! I can't believe it!
But his role was kind of pointless. It seems he was there just for the nostalgia factor, so I personally don't think he should have been in the show at all. Look at The Mandalorian. It brought many fan-favorite characters into its second season, but they all served a purpose. Ahsoka Tano, for example, was someone Bo-Katan had worked with in the past, as well as someone knowledgeable on Jedi temples. Thus, Ahsoka was able to enter the story and serve a specific purpose, while Zuko doesn't really do much. Seriously, if you took Zuko out of the equation, the story would be nearly identical. But anyways, why is Zahir such a big deal? Why is he such a threat? Well, it's simple. He's an anarchist. And if you take into account that he and his team are members of the Red Lotus, some of the best benders in the world, you can see why their anarchist beliefs pose such a threat. They want to topple world leaders, the Avatar included, in order to let people experience true freedom. So the 8th episode eventually comes along. Finally, after building up to his confrontation with Korra all season, Zahir finally tries to kidnap Korra again. And they get their butts kicked. This really killed the threatening image Zahir had built for himself up to this point. It would take a lot to regain that image. And holy crap does he redeem himself. He kills the Queen of the Earth Kingdom on screen! Sure, other characters died on screen before her and more do afterwards, especially in this season. But hers is the only on-screen death in this series that is slow and methodical. I was honestly shocked. Zahir regained his threatening presence and the Queen got what she deserved. It's a win-win. Afterwards, Zahir travels to the Northern Air Temple hoping to take the airbenders hostage. Clearly Kaya was no match for Minghua, just as Bumi, a novice airbender, had no chance of beating Ghazan. But there was no way that Zahir could beat Tenzin, so I was concerned that Tenzin, a master airbender, would once again fall victim to the villain's plot armor. But he didn't. He likely would have defeated Zahir if his siblings hadn't lost their fights. But in a 4-on-1, Tenzin doesn't stand a chance. So he gets overwhelmed by the attacks of his enemies and gets backed into a wall. But even then he refuses to give up, refuses to be used as a pawn in Zahir's game with Korra.
Give up. It's over.
As long as I'm breathing, it's not over.
This was a great scene, a true testament to Tenzin's character, as well as to the airbenders' refusal to sit back and let themselves die out. Zahir then gives Korra an ultimatum. Korra must either turn herself over to him or he will slaughter the airbenders. Clearly, her friends don't want her to surrender as they have no idea what Zahir has planned for her. But Korra knows that there is no other way, so in a beautifully executed scene, she says goodbye to her friends and family.
Korra,
Don't worry, Dad. I'll be all right.
I just want you to know how proud I am of you.
I love you, Dad.
I love you too, sweetheart.
Zahir is a pretty philosophical dude. He knows much of ancient wisdom and has shown on multiple occasions that he respects his opponent. So I was honestly expecting him to keep his end of the bargain here, and thus I think the double cross was a perfect twist for the finale. My assumption that he would keep his word was ultimately just that, an assumption. So when Korra felt betrayed after assuming the same thing about Zahir, I felt betrayed too. That was the only plot twist in the show thus far that I was emotionally invested in, so hats off to the writers for that. So Zahir captures Korra and injects her with a poison meant to force her into the Avatar state. Recall that if the avatar is killed while in the avatar state, the avatar cycle will permanently be broken. Korra is desperately in need of help here, help she doesn't receive for a good while. So she has to fight off Zahir and his team before they're able to kill her, and before the poison itself kills her. The stakes are higher than ever, or they feel that way at least. Korra's fight with Zahir is pretty cool and is in many ways reminiscent of Aang's fight against the Fire Lord. But Zahir is no Fire Lord, so it doesn't make all too much sense that he was able to keep up with Korra for so long, even when she's poisoned. The poison takes a greater hold of her, nearly leading to her death, but Jinor and the other airbenders step in at the perfect time to save her, and then capture Zahir. But this doesn't have the happy ending you were hoping for. The poison was in Korra for far too long and had such a negative impact on her that she had to use a wheelchair even 2 weeks later. One can easily tell at this point that Korra is depressed. How could she not be? In Book 2, she made all the wrong choices and walked away unscathed, but here in Book 3, she continually acted in a selfless manner, and all this did was lead her into a wheelchair where she can no longer fulfill her life's purpose. As she sits in the air temple watching Jinora be anointed an airbending master, a momentous occasion that brought many world leaders together, Korra remains emotionless. And as Tenzin vows to Korra that they will all strive to follow her example of selflessness, that he and Jinora will lead their people in the hopes of achieving balance in the world, Korra feels more worthless than ever. So she sits there, silently looking on as Jinora's lifelong dream comes true. The airbenders are at their best, while Korra, after everything she has just been through, is at her worst, and she begins to cry. What a phenomenal ending. The most moving scene in the entire series thus far. And now, Korra must finally learn the lesson she should have learned back in Book 1. She must come to terms with the fact that powers don't make someone who they are. One's character does. One's physical strength is nothing in comparison to the strength of their character. So make sure to stop by the channel next time when I take a look at The Legend of Korra Book 4, Balance.